My special guest tonight, you've seen him here before. His name is Greg Marcel Dixon, and he is running for Congress against Jim Clyburn. And Greg Marcel Dixon is running as an independent. Welcome back, Marcel. Oh, I think you're muted.
Hey, Sabrina, thank you for having me.
So, Marcel, I want to start off with the Joe Biden presidential debate. I want to get your take on that. Obviously, I think you and I both have been critical about Joe Biden's performance even before this debate. But I think it was that exposure of him on the debate stage that really gave a lot of people who may not have been paying attention to politics just yet. I think it gave a lot of people pause. How do you feel about Joe Biden's experience during that debate? And how do you feel about the way that media and politicians are trying to run cover for him?
Well, first, let me just clarify something. I'm actually running third party with the United Citizens Party here in South Carolina. And as far as the debate goes, my expectations were very low. But my goodness, even my expectations were subsided, I should say. So I feel like Trump demolished Biden, and I'm not necessarily a fan of either. But Biden definitely did not perform well at all. And I've seen polls where people are questioning whether he even has the mental capacity or even the health to serve another term. So they definitely did not do themselves any favors with that debate performance. And the thing is, I believe they are the ones that requested the debate or that were asking for it. I'm thinking they're regretting that now.
I think so, too. And I also want to get your opinion about the fact that obviously third party and independent candidates were not a part of this debate. I couldn't even stream this debate because CNN owned exclusive rights to it, which is unusual. In the past, I've been able to stream those debates. But obviously, the American people did not get to see any other options on that stage, even though there are. You're in South Carolina. What have people said in South Carolina? And are they aware that there are other candidates that are running?
So this is going to not surprise you at all. We have had a progressive party in South Carolina that has wanted to have ballot access. It's not the Republican Party that has been obstructing their privileges. It is the Democratic Party. And with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm not a fan of him either. If I had to choose between the three, I would choose Trump. I'm being very honest. I know your viewers may not like that, but that's just the God's honest truth. But with this debate, Trump did not mind, if you have read the articles, Trump did not mind RFK Jr. participating in the debate. It was the Democrats that objected to it. So the party that's supposed to be the protectors of democracy have been acting in ways that are absolutely diametrically opposed to what should be democratic norms. And like I said, I'm not a fan of RFK Jr. at all. I absolutely despise Biden. If I had to choose less of the three evils, I would say Trump. But I feel that RFK Jr. and the American people, period, have a right to know what options are out there and to hear each candidate make their case. And to me, they were robbed of it. Now, I know RFK Jr. did his own debate, but to me, it should have been on the general debate stage that was publicly televised. And on the matter of the media, Trump has always said the media is the enemy of the American people. And, you know, as Black Americans, freedmen in this country, the media has never been friends of ours. I'm not sure why that would offend us. But the media has not been making a good case to show that they are allies or good stewards of the American people. Because not only did CNN not allow the debate to be televised, they were in Atlanta, a city that is iconic for its Black American population and freedmen culture. And yet they did not invite any Black news outlets. I'm not saying these Black news outlets do good towards us, but they should have at least been giving access.
And speaking of that, Jim Clyburn is one of the politicians that has spoken out about Joe Biden's performance during the debate. I want to play this small clip from him here. He doesn't seem to think that Joe Biden has a problem at all. Everyone listen to this.
Joe Biden has a history of stuttering. He did that as a child. All of us know how stutterers operate. I went to school with one. So when you have trouble getting out a word, that is what comes from stuttering. But when he expressed opinions, he was on the money with the opinions. He may not have gotten the word out, but the thoughts were great.
What is your take on that, Marcel, about what Jim Clyburn there? First of all, calling people stutterers. And then two, he said Joe Biden may not have gotten the words out, but the thought was great.
Well, they're all making up words that are unintelligible. I don't know what is a stutterer, but in any case, I'm not sure how he's able to gauge Joe Biden's thoughts, because I did not hear one coherent thought at all from Joe Biden during that debate. I mean, did you? I remember one time Donald Trump said that illegal immigrants are coming in, raping and killing people. And Joe Biden's response, I did not hear all of it, but it was something along the lines of, no, they're being raped by their brothers-in-laws and uncles and cousins. I was like, huh? So I'm not sure. I did not hear one coherent thought there at all. But James Clyburn is doing what we know James Clyburn is going to do. He's going to defend Joe Biden no matter what. I am more appalled that Joe Biden, who is the elected official right now, who is our president, was not really able to convey a vision for what he has for us at all.
Right. There wasn't much talk about, I felt like neither one of them really talked about their plan.
Exactly.
Moving forward, or just for anybody, like just for the American people, period. I feel like they didn't really have a plan. Joe Biden, obviously, we understand he's going to try to defend his record because he is the incumbent. But I just didn't feel like either one of them had a clear plan, a path forward.
That's what it was for most of the debate. It was both of them defending their record, and it was almost like a race to the bottom. Like I said, people like to say lesser of the two evils. Well, Trump is definitely lesser of the two evils when you look at history of how freedmen have been treated in this country. But it was both of them pretty much defending their defending their record during the debate. I want to hear more about their policies for us, and that did not happen. I also do not feel the moderators did a good job of making them answer the questions. They would even say, again, please answer the question, and they still would not. I wanted the moderators to hold their feet to the fire, both of them. And I know there was a question proposed to Donald Trump about would he respect the outcome of the election. I feel that question should have been proposed to Joe Biden as well, because the Democratic Party is the one that has really been acting lately in a very undemocratic way.
I hear you. And I think the most controversial statement from the debate, or the one that went the most viral, is the statement from Donald Trump about Black jobs. Now, I am willing to, I'm a big woman here, and I'm willing to admit when I have been wrong. And it has been brought to my attention that I was definitely incorrect on this particular issue. And I saw this tweet from you here, which I did not know about this. Marcel said here, y'all literally used the term Black jobs 11 years ago, hypocrites. And this is a screenshot from The Root, which is a liberal, I would call it a liberal outlet. The Root mainly covers Black stories, Black culture, but it's liberal. And so The Root actually covered this in 2013. Black jobs crisis. Could GOP do better? So what Marcel was pointing out here in this tweet is that here were liberals, liberal media that used that term, Black jobs, but when Donald Trump used it, they cried, foul, and they said, how dare he say that, and that type of thing. I did not realize that they had made this statement back then as well. But why do you think so many people were upset by that phrase? Do you think they were mad because it was the phrase Black jobs, or do you think people were upset because it came from Donald Trump?
I think the latter. It came from Donald Trump. Look, the term Black jobs or variation of it is not new. It's been used by many, many presidents before. They may not literally say the words Black jobs, but they'll say jobs for quote unquote African Americans. Obama, Bush, Clinton, Reagan, there's always been variations of people saying jobs for African Americans, or they even talk about Black unemployment. But Al Sharpton, just a few months before the debate, called for more Black jobs. in the root, they usually promote the Democratic Party. They don't like to admit it, but they usually do. Just a few months ago, they called for more black jobs. I think it was a deflection from a legitimate point that Donald Trump was making about how, yes, I'm not going to blame these illegal immigrants for there being an issue with well-paying jobs in this nation. That's a corporate issue. Corporations are doing that, and politicians are doing that. However, Joe Biden never responded to the point that Donald Trump was making. And I think in order to deflect from the disastrous job that Joe Biden did, they made a big deal about black job, that terminology. But he also said black childcare, and strange enough, he also said Hispanic jobs. And no one has been outraged about that. You definitely hear people from the quote-unquote Hispanic community outraged about that at all.
That's a good point. You're right. That seemed to be overlooked.
Yeah, I'm sorry. May I get 1 second? I'm sorry. I hate to do it. I'll be right back.
Marcel will be right back. I'm going to go to some of the statements here from you guys, some of the comments here. I think Be Easy actually just mentioned that about the Hispanic job. Yeah, Be Easy said, he said Hispanic jobs, why no outrage? You know what? I really do think that was overlooked, that the media just kind of, looked past that.
Well, may I say something? I want more black jobs. And everyone's feigning, to me, stupidity or feigning ignorance. Well, what is a black job? What is a black job? Any job in this nation is a black job. We have historically, and currently we still do, all the jobs. I want more black jobs. I am not offended by that term. We say black communities, and people say, well, we run the black community. In which community do we run, honestly? We say black businesses. That is a term that we all use. We want more black businesses. A lot of presidents have said that. I want to invest in black businesses. No one's offended. I think it's internalized anti-black racism, honestly, Sabrina, because people are saying, oh, Trump was referring to menial jobs when he said that. Trump never expounded on that phrase. And by the way, he was specifically asked a question that was pertaining to the black community when he made that term. But he never expounded. He never even implied that black jobs referred to something degrading, which, by the way, I don't look down on any job at all. And I think we should adopt that attitude. There is no job that we should look down upon. Any job that is honest is a job that we should honor, and a person should be respected for having it. However, a black job could be something from a custodian to someone who's working as a cybersecurity senior analyst. We should respect all of them. But we say black businesses, we say black churches, we say black communities. The government tracks black unemployment. We say black marriages. We say black love. Any job that's held by a black person in this country is a black job. And any job that a black person would have had if not for corporations trying to import cheap labor and politicians trying to import a new constituency instead of investing in their current constituents doing policies for them, that is a black job. I think people are just trying to deflect from the fact that Trump demolished Biden, and both sides, this is something mainly the Democrats do, there is a whole infrastructure where they invest in social media influencers to try to control the narrative. And I definitely believe that's what's taking place here.
It's interesting because I think some people assume that when Trump said black jobs, that he was referring to low skilled or low wage jobs. And I think that was like, when I talked about it after the debate, there were people in the chat that were basically saying like, oh, it must mean like a minimum wage job or something like that. But no, I mean, like, that's what I said to people after the debate. I said, we have all different types of jobs. Like, we don't. But at one point in time, and this is something I think more people should look up and be more aware of. At one point in time in this country, we did have more manufacturing jobs. We had more. I know my grandparents left the South. They're from North Carolina and South Carolina. They left the South, the Carolinas area, and they moved to Baltimore. This is during the Great Migration part because there were more jobs there. And when they got to Baltimore, they got jobs at factories. Like, this was not an uncommon thing during that point in time. What apparently has happened over time, though, I can speak for Baltimore, I can't speak for other cities. A lot of those plants closed. A lot of those factories closed. And when they closed, there went the jobs. What I have been hearing from other people is that those few jobs that are left here in the United States, to your point, CEOs of these corporations decided that they wanted cheap labor. So they decided, oh, well, how can I get this work done for less money? Just to pay the workers a lower wage, but still get the work done. And that's where I guess the statement that Trump was making about, he said that the immigration that was happening, they were getting those jobs. And I blame the corporations for that. Like, I don't blame immigrants. I don't blame migrants. I do blame the corporations, because this goes into the capitalist system where they're trying to find a way to be greedy once again, just like NAFTA. If you go back to NAFTA, that was greed. That was another way of these corporations to say, we're just going to send these jobs overseas because it's going to make us a lot more money, but we'll still get the products produced. And there has to be something that we can do in this country to stop these corporations from underpaying people.
That's why my plan, in order to combat mass immigration, because you have illegal immigration, which is a problem, but you also have legal immigration where you have companies. For example, even though I'm a public school teacher, I recently switched over to the cybersecurity sector, and people are having a very, very difficult time getting a job in that sector. And one factor, is not the only factor, is that these companies want to import people here on work visas so that they can do the jobs, but for a lower rate. And some of those people who are immigrants who come here on work visas have been complaining about how they're not being paid and how they're being mistreated. That is a lack of accountability for the corporations. We need to have an infrastructure where corporations can be fined, and in some cases, the business owners can be jailed. But there's an out they have right now. There's a clause which says that they can be punished if they knowingly hire someone in the country illegally. And they use that as an out because they can just say, well, I use an agency. It happens all the time. I want to change that language from knowingly to recklessly. They should have an infrastructure in place where they should know that if they hire someone in the nation, that person is here legally. Now, of course, some illegal immigrants use fake social security numbers or things of that nature, but the corporations have responsibility as well. But there's a part we don't talk about enough. Politicians. Politicians are often in bed with these corporations. And there are some politicians, usually on the Democratic side, and I know I'm talking more to the progressive viewers, but I do not believe in any part of this country should a person in this nation illegally be given the right to vote. That is something that is sacred, that should only be for American citizens. But you have politicians, usually on the Democratic side, they realize that the freedmen population is waking up. We're finally starting to demand things for our vote after 60 years of voting, most part, for the Democratic Party. I'm not saying all of us do. In fact, most of us don't vote. Over half of us don't vote. But those of us who do, it would usually go to the Democratic Party. They're here starting to demand more things, such as reparations. So now they want to import a new constituency. No. The same way corporations should not be able to import cheap labor because they don't want to pay American workers fairly. Politicians should not be able to import a new constituency because they don't want to work on behalf of the Americans that elect them.
Well, what do you think is going to happen, particularly with the job market? Because it's a problem, and this is getting worse over time. I'll get into the cost of living report for 2024 later on tonight in the show, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. But the reality is, as long as corporations can hire cheaper labor, they will continue to do so. Even when you look at some of the companies that are going on strike, remember the UAW went on strike. They were already trying to get other workers to come in and to be strike breakers, to break the picket line. Like, oh, we'll just get workers from somewhere else and we'll pay them less and they'll do the job. That should not be legal.
Exactly. And that's the point right there. That's why I was saying politicians, corporations are in bed. And ultimately, you know who's responsible? You, I, everyone. The American voter We are ultimately responsible. Remember, the government gets their power from us. The government doesn't give us the power and determine the limits of our power. We give the government their power. So when we see that politicians are allowing policies where companies can form conglomerates and raise prices sky high and then say they can't invest in the American public because of inflation, when real inflation happens because companies are not regulated properly. I'm not for overregulation, no, but regulation does need to happen, because if not, you'll have 5 companies, they all work together, they raise the prices sky high, and they all benefiting. We should not have ways where when people go on strike, exercising their civic rights, they can just import cheap labor. That is something we have to demand from the people we elect, or we have to organize to run people for office who will do what we want them to do and what needs to be done, and we elect them.
What is it like where you're from in South Carolina, Marcel, in particular, the job market? Because I know Joe Biden is bragging about job numbers. Like, he continues to say, we created all these jobs, but I still see people in Massachusetts being laid off. And I mean, I'm talking about people finding a job and then 3 months later they got laid off. I see these announcements all the time, whether it's on Facebook or another social media platform, people DMing me privately saying they just got laid off. But according to Joe Biden, the economy is great. I read an article recently that was from Forbes that said that we are now seeing 2008 economic employment numbers. Like, we're back into the '08, stage again. And I feel like the average worker sees this, but of course, the average worker doesn't get to, I guess, speak to corporate media. The average worker doesn't get to, and they're the ones that have the narrative. So the reality is the economy is bad. Inflation is still an issue. And I think about places like where you're from in South Carolina, where there may not have been a lot of jobs to begin with anyway. How are people doing there now economically and the job market?
Well, one thing we have to consider when they brag about their job reports, this goes for Biden, this goes for Trump, this goes for Obama, is a lot of people are employed through the gig sector, okay, which does not have a safety net at all. That's number one. Number two, people talk about, unemployment is so low. Trump did this. Look, when Trump was talking about the black unemployment being at historic low, I didn't celebrate. Okay, that was not sufficient for me. So I'm definitely not going to celebrate for Biden. They don't talk about the quality of jobs. Some people are working one job that's not even covering a third of their necessities. So they have to get a second job or a third job, or they do another job through the gig economy. So they may have jobs, but the quality of jobs are very low. For example, the median income in America, I believe, is like $65,000, $69,000. In South Carolina, for freedmen, of black Americans who are descendants of the emancipated, is $29,000. So that right there should give you some idea of how desperate things are here. And for white Americans, it's higher, but it hovers around $50,000, still far lower than the median income. So the job market in South Carolina, if you ask people, they will tell you it's great. But yet there was a report that came out from the state newspaper, which is the paper from Columbia, South Carolina, our state's capital, that said that 49% of South Carolinians are having severe struggles to pay their rent, to pay for food.
So I see things haven't changed, because for those who don't know, I graduated from the University of South Carolina, and then I worked in Columbia, South Carolina for a couple of years after that. And I struggled. I had 2 jobs at one point. That was just to pay like my rent and the bills and all that jazz. But I was like, there's no way. I was like, dude, there's no way I'm never going to be able to get ahead, because the pay was just so low, whether you had a degree or not, unless you went into right. Like, unless you went into like law. And even at one point I had friends that were going into the nursing field. And then some of the colleges were like, well, no, the nursing profession is now becoming oversaturated. That's another thing that can also happen. But it's ridiculous. And I think people just assume that because the cost of living in South Carolina may be a lot lower than New York or California, that people don't need to make as much. But that's not necessarily true.
It's not true. And even though the cost of living is lower, the pay is much lower as well. And by the way, the cost of living is not nearly as low as it used to be. That gap between living in California or the state of New York has closed significantly. And yet California, New York, the pay is going to be significantly higher. Yes, the cost of living is still higher in those places, but in South Carolina, it's gotten much higher as well. And while you can still get more for your money, you're just going to have a hard time getting a lot of money. And one, because South Carolina is a very, very rural state. So we do need investment in industries. But that is something that the Democrats are to blame. I'm never going to absolve Clyburn of his responsibility, but this is something that falls in the Republicans' hands. They allow industries to come here, and they give them these tax breaks. And on the state government, their budget is ran from taxes. And they allow these industries to get tens of millions of dollars in tax breaks, hundreds of millions of dollars of tax breaks. Meanwhile, South Carolina is the 9th poorest state in the union.
This is very true. And so Black Man is asking, so why keep voting for Clyburn? I know you've said this before on the show, Marcel, but for those who may not have been around during that time, can you explain to everybody who is actually voting for Jim Clyburn?
Well, let me start with who's not. That's the majority. We have like 650,000 eligible voters in my district, South Carolina District 6 alone, and Clyburn usually skates by with just 128 to 150,000 votes. So most people are not voting for him. Of those who do, I don't know why people assume it's Black people voting for him. It's a lot of white liberals, and the Black people who do vote for him are usually people who are in his fraternity, church buddies, head of these nonprofits who he helps make sure they get some funding. But Clyburn usually gets 120 to 150,000 votes of 650,000 eligible voters. So where I fault people here in our district is that we have not organized to replace him. Yes, people have ran against him, but we have not organized to get someone to run for office to help them get the amount of votes they need to organize voting blocks and to demand things from him. When Clyburn shows up to a public event, which is very rare, by the way, because, you know, he's not going to do that. People will, take pictures with my baby. Oh, let me get a photo with you, if they even know who he is. I just went to a film premiere, Geechee One Films, which apparently they were the ones that helped Tubi get their start. Tubi used a lot of their films. I went to one of their film premieres this past Saturday, and it was an audience of 60 to 70 people, a lot of young freedmen there in Charleston. And I asked them, well, the host asked them, did they know James Clyburn? 2 people knew who he was. 5 other people said they had heard of him, but they weren't really sure who he was. So it's our fault for not being civically engaged and not doing our civic duty. But I do want to say, my campaign manager has been trying to set up a debate. There's going to be 6 people on the ballot this time. Clyburn, myself, Duke Buckner from the Republican Party, someone from the Alliance Party, someone from the Libertarian Party, and an independent candidate. 4 of us have agreed to a debate. Duke Buckner from the Republican Party, the Alliance Party candidate, the Libertarian candidate, and of course, and I. We can't reach the independent candidate. We've been trying to find him. Now we're going to reach out to Clyburn. It's going to be interesting to see how Clyburn responds to this. But we're going to have the debate no matter what. So either he shows up to defend his record, or we will go on TV and demolish his record, deservingly so.
Will the debate be advertised on, or will the debate be shown on local news?
We're working on that right now. You know, this is going to be the first debate, I believe, in my district during the general election since 1996. That's the level, that's the lack of engagement we have in this nation. It should be mandatory. You do debates. Nancy Pelosi never shows up for debates. Chuck Schumer never shows up for debate. Clyburn is just doing everyone else does. That's no excuse. However, this is going to be the first debate for my research, general election since 1996. That's the lack of accountability we have here. But Clyburn doesn't show up, we will have a dummy in his place with his name on a placard, and we will go in on his record with facts, not emotions. I will use facts. I don't know what my other contemporaries will use, but I will use facts to go after his record.
This is a really good question here. Thank you, FM. Marcel, ask Clyburn why he supports HR 40 and yet says we are not going to get reparations. It makes no sense. To add to that, I've seen a couple of videos where he has been approached by activists and they're asking him about that. And he was really nasty to them. He was telling them to get the fuck out of his face and everything.
He is very hostile, very belligerent, and very disrespectful. He only talks to Black Americans like that. He only speaks to us like that, who are the majority of his voters. HR 40, let me just say, is not a good bill at all. Let me just give that. Let me preface my comments with that, okay? However, Clyburn was kind of pressured into supporting HR 40. He was getting approached so often by our reparations here in South Carolina that he, after that reparations confronted him in front of a good bit of people, he then kind of signed on for support of HR 40. Now, keep in mind, HR 40 had been in existence for almost 40 years, okay? By that time, that he finally signed on. But Clyburn doesn't believe we'll get reparations. But here's the thing. You are a leader. When you are a leader, even if you don't believe something will happen, if it's something that should happen, if it's the thing that should have happened, then it's your responsibility as a leader to fight to make it happen. And even if Clyburn can't get reparations passed, I know it's an uphill battle, he can use his platform. Because I've never denied that Clyburn is a powerful man. He's very powerful. If he actually did things for his constituents, especially his fellow freemen, I would actually be proud of the way he's worked himself up through the ranks. But he could just use his platform alone and make the moral case for reparations. He can talk about how reparations has been done by America many times and is being done right now, and not just for the people who were done wrong, but sometimes for their children, their grandchildren. He can use his platform to help educate people. He refuses to do even that. But he talks about Catawba Native Americans who used to enslave us and who were slave catchers. And the original ones have been dead for centuries, but till this day, he presents a bill that helps them get, and these are the words, this is exact words of the bill: special protection, recognition, justice, and rights. So he does it for other groups, but won't do it for his own. Unforgivable.
That's the same thing I was telling people on Sunday about Byron Donalds. Same thing, because that was another tweet I saw that you posted that he said he was against reparations, basically because he would not qualify for the descendants of slavery reparations. But he gets money from AIPAC, which means that I'm sure he supports reparations for. There you go.
He would never be against the Holocaust survivors and innocents getting reparations. Never, because AIPAC would dry up those funds like that. But he feels the right to speak about reparations for freemen. Let me just say real quick, this is why sometimes Black Americans have a funny view on immigration. Our the Civil Rights Act made it possible for immigrants from all over the world to come here. It got rid of all those immigration restrictions. And the thanks we get are a lot of children of immigrants. I'm not saying all, but a lot of them, one is too many, being against what we're owed.
Well, here's a question for you from H. Dennis. Thank you so much for this. Can you ask him what he thinks about Trump giving police immunity and privatizing public schools? Thank you.
Well, here's the thing with me. The only area where I align with Trump is the fact that he's against mass immigration, but only after he gets benefits from it. He's going to make sure he benefits from it. After that, he wants us to stop. He says a lot of stupid things. I don't even think he could give police full immunity, but here's what I would say. As far as my people go, the Black Americans who are descendants of the emancipated, who have the status of freedmen, as far as the way we've been treated in many cases, it's already as if the police has immunity. We've seen us unjustly murdered. And here's the thing. Some people who are appalled by Trump saying that are the same ones who would defend the police murdering my people with full immunity. I'm not saying all police do it. I'm not even saying most police do it. But when it happens, some people pretty much want to give the police full immunity to harm us. Now, some people are shook when Trump said that because they realize how it can harm them as well. Like James Baldwin said, if they come for you in the morning, they'll be coming for me that night. What happens to you should be important to me, as what happens to me should be important to you. And as far as privatizing schools, I don't know about that. But if you're referring to, I guess, the funding for students following the child instead of going automatically to the schools. I know I'm speaking to progressive. I know that's something that really irks y'all, but that's something I actually support. So don't get me off the show. I feel like we need to have more options because I'm in South Carolina where I went to, James Clyburn has an area called the Corridor of Shame. It's not just James Clyburn, but it refers to a network of rural, extremely poor communities where sometimes the rate of kids not reading on grade level is as high as 95%. I went to such a school. If my people in my community had that funding, we would have started our own community school and taken good care of our own people. Look, y'all, public education in America is modeled after freedmen, after what Black Americans did. After slavery ended, we started our own schools. The schedule for schools, kids to be in school for like 8 months, that came from us. Schools be mandatory, that came from us. We can take care of our own children. The public school system has never done Black American kids right. Now, I believe that schools should be better funded, public schools. But I also believe that people want to have options outside of that. They should.
I think the federal government should fund all public schools, just like they fund the Dodge schools that I went to.
That's what I believe too. Equitable funding. That's what my platform calls for.
And in reference to the quote from James Baldwin, another thing I've mentioned before to people on the show, one of the reasons why we do not have health care for everyone in this country is because they didn't want Black people to get it.
That's the level you see that. And now you have a lot of white people, millions of white people who are suffering from ailments every single day, and they can't afford to get the help they need.
When they made some of those laws, they didn't think about the fact that it would also affect poor white people.
Yes. But Lyndon B. Johnson, what did Lyndon B. Johnson said? He said he realized, and Lyndon B. Johnson was a good old boy too, but he said he realized the only thing you have to do for a white person is to convince them that they're better than the best Negro, and they won't notice that you're picking their pocket. He said, give them someone to look down upon. He said they'll empty their pocket for you. So I need white America, I'm not saying all, but a good segment of white America needs to do some soul searching and realize you cannot hurt Black America without hurting yourself, your children, your grandchildren.
That's
so
right.
Forth and so on.
One more for you, Marcel. Thank you, Old Crow. Sabby, can you ask Marcel if he is doing his own podcast or anything? I'd really like to see some of his other insights.
I have a podcast, but look, hats off to you, so Sabby, Brianna, Joy Gray, all of you do podcasts. I have one. It's called 50 Shades of Grey. Marcel Dixon. Yes, I did a play on words. I'm like that. But I only did 6 episodes, and then I started working full time again as a teacher. When you work as a teacher, it takes everything from you. So I haven't done it since then. At first, I never want to do a podcast. People asked me and told me that I should. I did 6 episodes. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of research if you want to do a quality podcast. And I would like to do one. But I do have some episodes on there. 50 Shades of Grey, Marcel Dixon. I talked about a wide variety of things, from this myth of the Black community being so much more homophobic than others. I talked about how it's going to be up to us to get the politics that we deserve and need. So please do check it out.
Oh, and sorry, one more for you, Marcel.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Why not use negative campaign ads against Clyburn?
I will never use negative ads against Clyburn, but I will use the truth. And I do have commercials that I ran against Clyburn that use the truth. Maybe if you go on Twitter or you search Greg Marcel Dixon, you will see some of my commercials against him. I compare a person going to a doctor who has every single patient of his has died. I said, would you go to that doctor? I said, imagine a teacher and every single one of their students fail every single year. Would you want your child in that teacher's class? So I said, my people in South Carolina District 6. Clyburn has been in office for 31 years, and yet he has the 6th poorest district out of 435 total in America. And yet we keep reelecting him. So I'm not going to go negative on Clyburn, but I will use the truth. I've called Clyburn out a lot. I called out how he's done land policies to help other groups get land justice, but not for the freedmen, his own people. So I used the truth against Clyburn, and I don't consider that negative. I just call it the truth. And I told his daughter, who called herself coming at me, one of his daughters, Jennifer, I think, I said, if I'm lying, show me where I'm lying. And she could not.
Marcel, where can people follow your campaign?
Marcel, the number for Congress. Marcel for Congress on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's the same thing. Facebook is Marcel for Congress, the word F-O-R. And my website is marcelforcongress.com.
Awesome. Marcel, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me again. You take care.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Marcel Dixon. Again, you can, oh, sorry about that one. Again, you can follow his campaign at Marcel for Congress. That's his website. There, again, he's running third party against Jim Clyburn. So if you live in his district and you're tired of Jim, you can support Marcel Dixon. I think a lot of people are tired of Jim Clyburn at this point. He is a doozy. Good God, a doozy.